My name is Tommy Rosen, and I am thrilled to be speaking today with Nick Ortner. Nick is CEO of the Tapping Solution, a company with a mission to bring simple, effective, natural healing into the mainstream through emotional freedom techniques, or tapping. Nick, thank you for joining us and sharing your experience and wisdom with the Recovery 2.0 conference. Welcome.
Oh, thanks, Tommy. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So Nick, obviously, emotional freedom technique, as you've been teaching it now for a number of years, seems applicable to a variety of things. It's almost kind of like there's almost nothing that it's not applicable to. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for people who don't know what we're talking about, emotional freedom techniques or tapping is a technique where we're literally tapping on endpoints of meridians on our body while saying certain statements, while focusing on the stress, the craving, the addiction, the emotion, the challenge, whatever's going on. And it works on such a varied number of things, as you mentioned. I think basically because the underlying mechanism that it's working on, and what the latest research has shown, is that when we tap on these endpoints of meridians on our body, we're actually sending a calming signal to the amygdala in the brain. And a lot of your listeners and viewers might know that the amygdala is that very ancient fight or flight response center in the brain. It's the stress center. It's the part of us that certainly when we're in physical danger, it serves us to mobilize our resources. Blood flows away from the brain and from the gut into the arms and legs. Why? So we can fight, so we can flee, so we can take action. But it also mobilizes when we're sitting at work and get an email that stresses us out, or someone says something to us that upsets us. That amygdala is still firing. Now, if you look at really all of our life challenges, if you look at relationship challenges, if you look around at weight loss and food challenges, at addictions, at pain in the body, at financial challenges, everything that we're faced with, the underlying mechanism of all of them is stress, right? At some component, whenever there's a challenge, that amygdala is firing. And when we look really deep, we recognize that those challenges normally happen because we don't feel safe, we don't feel loved, we don't feel accepted, we feel that we're somehow in danger, right? And that same fight or flight response, we've all had the experience in a relationship, right? A relationship is one where it can be very obvious. Somebody says something to us, right? Relationship, two people. Someone says something to us. It hurts us in some way. We feel attacked. We feel, that they're wrong, that we're right, all these things. And we don't feel safe. That amygdala fires. And what do? The instant response until we learn other methods is to be defensive, right? To fight back. Oh, no, you're wrong. That anger, that back and forth, that, we can't communicate because we're both fighting for our ground. We truly are fighting to keep ourselves safe and to establish ourselves. So when we get to that underlying stress response, that reflexive action, that's when I think really dramatic things happen. And whether you do it through yoga, whether you do it through meditation, whether you do it through tapping, whether you do it through all three things or all 10 things, I think I slot tapping in as another resource to use in this journey. It's not a different philosophy. It's not a technique that doesn't work with meditation. It's not, oh, well, you're either a tapper or a meditator, right? It's, you do meditation, fantastic. Try tapping when you can't calm yourself. How many times have you tried to meditate and go, all right, I forgive that person, and there's a part of your brain that's just saying, no, it's total BS. I don't forgive him. They don't deserve it. I'm not going to let it go. We normally know what we want to do. We know the choices, especially if you're, listening to this conference, you're making, or you're trying to make better choices on a daily basis. The question is, what's between trying to make a better choice and actually being able to make them? And I think that stress response, that amygdala, the childhood events that are holding us back, they all play into that space in between actually being able to go from trying to doing.
There's a particular process in at least in the 12-step approach to recovery, where when we look back at our past and we're trying to do an inventory of our own behavior and the places where we might need to work on ourselves, we look at our past through our own resentments. So rather than look back at the past and say, oh, I did this wrong or I did this wrong, we look at our resentments and say, where have we been resentful in our life? And that actually tells us quite a bit about where we've been off center, if you will. And resentments are considered to be, what we call the number one offender. resentments actually kill and destroy more people, more alcoholics, more addicts than anything else. So it's really important that we look at this piece of resentment. And what I'm hearing in what you're saying is that, the question is, how do we let go of things? How do we forgive ourselves and others? How do we move through stuck energy to get to a place of flow? And I think that what I'm hearing from you is that tapping actually could be an amazing process as somebody's going through what is our fourth step. The fourth step is looking at your resentment, your personal inventory. Does it make sense?
Oh, 100%. And we do something similar in tapping called the personal peace procedure, developed by Gary Craig, who was the founder of EFT. And he basically says something similar. Go back through your life, go to childhood, go to elementary school, middle school, high school, go to your adult life, go to your relationship, and find where is their energy? Where are the things that when we think about them, there's still a charge? I love the word charge when we try to figure out sort of what's holding on to us, because we can have an experience, one person has an experience happen to them 20 years ago where, let's say, they got dumped by their girlfriend, and she did it over the phone, and it was terrible, right? 20 years later, I ask you about it, and you go, yeah, it was terrible then, I was heartbroken, but I'm fine. I'm not angry at her, I moved on. Or you can have the experience that goes, you know what, I haven't thought about this for 5 years, but when I think of that, I get pissed, I'm still mad. I still feel the charge in my body on that. And to me, that's how we differentiate. Is this something to work on, or is it something we've let go of? And the reality is that all these events, I'm sure you've done it, I've done it, when you stop and look and you actually take an accounting of it and you go, all right, let me write down my resentment. You come up with a list that you're like, are you kidding me? Am I walking around with this every day? And I think what's really important for people to recognize is that we tend to think these things are in our past. But if you write that list and you have those resentments, I don't care if you haven't thought about them in 5 years, you are carrying them around every day. They're in your back pocket. I love the term baggage. We use baggage in terms of relationships. And I say to people, imagine if each one of those resentments was a piece of baggage, all right? And now you got 20, and you're trying to go somewhere, meet someone new, and you're carrying around 20 bags. Every step you take, you got another bag, and someone says something to you, and you got to wait, hold on, I got another bag, but that's what we're bringing to relationships. And we know this too. When we meet people, we'll say things like, well, she has a lot of baggage, well, he has a lot of baggage. Why? Because when we sit down and communicate with them or share dinner with them, we see, oh my gosh, look at everything they're bringing from the past. Look at all the anger, look at all the resentment. We know this. The opportunity in the 12-step program and using tapping in conjunction with it is to have a different process to let it go. And this is where I think the tapping is so powerful, because what we're doing is the same thing in terms of identifying resentments, but that crucial step when you go, all right, I'm ready to let go, I know I should let go, it's time to let go, and I try to do it and I just can't, right? That to me is where you bring the body in, and that's why the body is so powerful. I know you do Kundalini yoga and other yoga, and that's, again, bringing it back to the body. You can literally let go of resentments when you're doing yoga, because we're not just being up in our heads, and our culture is so head-driven and going, okay, I'm supposed to forgive, and we forget that resentment has been locked in our brain as this wasn't safe, this wasn't healthy, this wasn't good for us. Don't forget it, because if you forget, it's going to happen again. Right?
So the origin of EFT, of tapping, is based in Chinese medicine?
Well, it certainly has the roots in Chinese medicine. It was discovered over 30 years ago by a gentleman by the name of Roger Callahan. He was a traditional psychologist, psychotherapist, and working with a client with a phobia. He tried doing tapping with her simply because he had read about the stomach meridian and then underneath the eye, and it was just kind of like, well, try this, and the phobia cleared just like that. And then Gary Craig, who's the guy who developed EFT, took Roger's more complicated system, simplified it down to what we use now, which is an easy process, takes minutes to learn, you know it, and then you work from there.
Now, when we practice yoga, one of the things about yoga is it's a super deep well, and there's different schools of yoga, different perspectives on yoga, and there's literally hundreds of poses in yoga, and that can be daunting.
Yeah.
I'm understanding that it's a different modality when we're talking about tapping.
Well, the nice thing is that the process is just the tapping points are always the same when we're doing EFT. What changes, and what perhaps could be daunting if you don't know how to do it or don't find the right resources, is what to say, what to do. You can have a basic experience doing the tapping, clearing some stress, where it helps to work with a practitioner, work with a friend, read a couple books about it. Isn't going deeper. It's in peeling the layers of the onion.
You mentioned saying things. So is there a repetition of an affirmation or a mantra while you're tapping?
Yeah, it's such an interesting part of the process that the basics of tapping are, you start on the karate chop point, we call it the setup statement. And it's really as simple as even though, right? We start with even though, and we fill in the blank on what the issue is. Even though I'm really angry, even though I'm so upset, even though my back hurts, even though I need to have this food, even though I'm frustrated, whatever you're feeling in the moment, I deeply and completely love and accept myself, or I accept myself, right? So that's how we start the whole process, which to me, there's so many things happening here, right? We have the physical act of sending these calming signals to our amygdala. So just doing the tapping by itself is a component that's helping out. We're also acknowledging how we feel, right? Even though, and listing the problem. So often, especially in the realm of positive psychology, which I fully believe in, and tapping has a huge component of positive psychology, but so often people misunderstand it and go right to, I'm not allowed to think a negative thought. The second I think anything negative, it's going to come to me in my life. Right. I'm going to, all these things. So here's what we're saying. We're saying, even though I have this problem, I acknowledge it. This is the way I feel. I'm allowing myself to be angry, to be frustrated, to be stressed. And then we're saying, I accept myself with that. Another component is so powerful. How often do we go, oh, I'm angry, and then we reject ourselves for being angry. Oh, I shouldn't be angry. I shouldn't feel this way. I should forgive. So now we're compounding the anger with self-rejection. As opposed to saying, here we go. This is happening. I accept myself with it. And then we tap through the points, through the series of the points, just focusing on whatever the issue is. I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm sad, and just going through the repetition, tapping on the points, tapping on the points. We focus on what we generally call the negative, or I like to call the truth, because we're just speaking the truth of how I feel right now. I'm pissed, I'm frustrated, I feel this way about myself, about others. And we do that up to a certain point where we find that something switches, right? So let's say we're working with anger, and you say, well, I'm really angry at my wife. I can't believe what she said to me 3 days ago. I can't let it go. We give it a number on a 0 to 10 scale. It's an 8, so we try to gauge where it is. We do the tapping. I'm so angry at her. I can't believe she said this. Going through it, doing a couple rounds, and then all of a sudden it goes down to a 6, a 5, or a 4. And then at a 4, there's the opportunity to say, I choose to forgive her now. It's time to let this go, and doing the positive affirmations with it. But if if you and I sat down and you go, I'm angry at a level 8, and I said to you, well, let's do some positive affirmations. You'd be like, did you not hear what I said? I'm pissed off. I don't want to affirm. I'm not ready to forgive this person. It's not time to forgive this person. So we're often rushing through to that point. I got to forgive him now, as opposed to feeling the emotion, not doing it forever. We don't believe in sitting there for 6 weeks being pissed off at someone. We believe in a few minutes, have the experience, speak your truth, let it go, and then affirm the positive. And that's where real healing and forgiveness takes place.
Nick, when I got to rehab back in 1989, I stepped in to Hazelden, which is in Minnesota. And in walking into that institution, my thought about myself was the sum total of all my effort to this point in my life has led me to this horrible place and to this terrible space in my life. I can't, this is the best I could create to this point in my life. And I felt very much like I had failed at life, and I felt like a failure. I came with all of that negativity. What I didn't realize was I was actually hitting a jackpot, but I wouldn't know it for some time to come. But this is what people are coming into recovery with. It's, nobody gets sober feeling great about themselves. And people are not like, oh, I think I'll get sober today. That sounds like a grand idea. It's like, my life is in the toilet. I have no choice. I kind of have to, make a move here. Either my life is being threatened. Certainly my happiness and my well-being is being threatened. I have to change. Yeah. How do you address that from a tapping and EFT perspective when somebody's carrying that level of shame, guilt, and sort of negativity about themselves, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, you go one step at a time, like anything else, and you know, the tapping can certainly be done just generally for stress relief. You can say, even though I'm stressed, you can do the tapping points, you'll feel better. Where the real progress comes is in getting really specific. And if I was talking to someone and they said, I'm ashamed of myself, I would say, about what? And getting really specific. And sure enough, they might say 50 different things, right? The way I've acted the last 10 years, I've embarrassed myself 100,000 times, and they're all together, right? But I'd say, okay, let's go to one, right? Let's go to one event, because there's usually one or two that really stick out. That go, oh, well, a family picnic, I can't believe what I did. And then we go and we actually tap on that specific event, because again, going back to that charge, if person's thinking about that family picnic, they're ashamed of what they did, they have that charge in the body. They feel that shame in the body. And we go through, tapping through the event, reliving it, saying, well, what's the moment in time where you were most ashamed? And just breaking it down, what else happens? And then sure enough, sometimes in 5 minutes, sometimes in 20 minutes, sometimes in an hour, that event just becomes a memory. It was like, yeah, that's what happened. I'm sure, Tommy, if I asked you to look back on things that at one point in your life you were ashamed of doing, if I asked you to think about it now, you wouldn't be like, I don't want to talk about it, I'm so embarrassed, and so this, because you've worked through it, right? You've gotten to a point where it says, well, it happened. It made me who I am. It made me stronger. I was doing the best I could with the resources I had. You have a positive understanding of it. So the question is how to switch from that, because I really do think it's important in the recovery process to not just say, all right, I'm just pushing everything that happened away, right? I'm going to have a mental disconnect that says, those were 10 awful years, and now I'm going to will myself to act differently, to disconnect from that, Right. Willpower only takes us so far, whether it be in addiction recovery or in losing weight or in procrastination at work. It only takes us so far. Literally, our willpower muscle literally gets exhausted. They've done research studies that show that you cannot make difficult decisions as much as, it just gets tired. It's like a muscle. It's like if I said to you, all right, do these bicep curls for the next 50 years. You'd be like, oh.
That's right.
So it's not willpower where we find our way to recovery, to losing weight, it's through forgiveness and self-acceptance and just making this new way of being part of who you are.
Yes. I'm remembering now, during school, I had stolen quite a bit of groceries from this one particular market. That was one of my sort of the wreckage of some of my drug using. And so as part of the recovery process, you go back and you make amends to these people. And I remember making amends to this guy. He was the manager. He's the current manager of this particular market. And I said, can I get a minute of your time, And I sat him down, and he was not there when I was perpetrating these, these petty crimes, He wasn't even working at this place. But I sat him and I said, look, I have to tell you something. I've got to clear it up. Here's why. I'm part of this process, and in this process, we have to do this work, and it's going to be very important for me to stay sober and to get clear moving forward. This guy, his jaw was literally on the ground. He'd never heard anything like it, and I had to give him a check and pay back. But the process for me of communication and facing and owning up to, I don't consider myself a thief, but I have stolen.
Yes.
I don't consider myself a liar, but I have lied. I'm not a cheater, but I have cheated. And I'm not above those behaviors, especially when drugs and alcohol are entered into the equation. But with regards to tapping, what I'm taking away right now is, as you had said, another modality to complement the process of recovery. And I'm thinking, I really want people in recovery to start adopting tapping into their process. It's very, very important. And I'm seeing the efficacy of it all around me. And I want people to become familiar with it. So I'm going to really ask that you help me to get the word out to my community. And obviously you being here right now is a big part of that. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And I agree. You know, it's so easy to slide into your daily life. It can make such a profound difference. I mean, on so many levels, whether it be, you know, even just we've been talking about the emotional experience, but the physical cravings. You know, I've tapped with people who are craving a cigarette. I was doing a showing of the Tapping Solution film a couple of years ago, and you know, the film runs about 90 minutes, and we were doing about half an hour discussion afterwards, and a guy raises his hand and goes, I'm desperate for a cigarette. You know, we're in this little yoga studio. He's like, I'm sorry, but can we try to tap on this? Because I'm loving this discussion, love the movie, and now here I have to go outside and smoke a cigarette. You know, he was just so frustrated with that physical craving. So we spent no more than 5 minutes just going, even though I have this craving, you know, measured it, it was an 8 or 9, went through the tapping points, and then he said, the craving's gone. I don't need it. I'm good. And you know, Tommy, it's like if he was still craving the cigarette, he would have gone and had the cigarette. You know, physical cravings are for real. You know,
Absolutely.
like So something switched, something worked. So you know, just bringing the tapping into the experience of recovery can just really catapult results.
You know, I'm thinking, Nick. I'm thinking about the thought process within it from the perspective of addiction, and then the transformation of our thoughts as we move through recovery, or as we move through any program of progression as a human being.
Yeah.
There does seem to be, you know, someone, I can't remember who I can attribute this quote to, but everything in the world is created twice. First we create it in our mind, and then it manifests, or might manifest in reality. And it speaks so much to the struggle of the alcoholic and the addict, because our thinking, at a certain point, when we're working on getting better, our thinking is somewhat broken. And just like that guy, you know, I feel this need for a cigarette. I know I don't need it, but the thoughts bombard me, and eventually, I'm gonna give in. Right? There's going to be a fatigue that happens. I can't.
Yeah, the willpower fatigue. I just can't, you know.
I can't do this forever.
Yeah.
And I realized that at 22 years sober, if that thinking starts in my head, it doesn't matter that I'm 22 years sober. I too am eventually going to give into that. And the only reason I can attribute my recovery, the only reason I'm sober today, and content in being sober and thriving, is because those thoughts don't come to me.
Yeah.
If I was plagued with those thoughts, I'd be in deep trouble.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
So how about tapping as a preventative modality? So in other words, Nick, I intend to stay sober. It's my great desire to continue on this path, and I want to prevent negative thinking, these kinds of thoughts coming into my head. Can I use tapping as a preventative measure moving forward?
Well, sure, absolutely. I mean, look, that negative thinking is either coming from your daily experiences now. You find, oh, wow, I got myself into this situation where I'm really stressed out, you know, and, you know, putting on the Recovery 2.0 conference, right? All this stress, you go, I better find a way to deal with this. You know, the thing about addictions is that at some level, they work, right? They do the job temporarily, you know, with a lot of terrible side effects, but they do the job of relieving whatever the issue is. So someone's stressed, they go have a cigarette, they take a deep breath, they relax, they get time, you know, by themselves. Well, that worked, right? You know, someone has a drink and too many drinks, it worked. I don't want to think about these things, and guess what? When I drink, I get to just let go. And a big part of addictions are about letting go of all these other thoughts, you know, just all this stress in our lives. So if you're using the tapping to manage your daily stress, then to me, that's using it in a preventative way.
Awesome. Thank you. There's a moment in my life when I had a debilitated back condition. I was a number of years in recovery, and I had gone down this terrible road of feeling like for the rest of my life I'd basically be crippled. I literally couldn't walk without pain. And I'd been behaving in a lot of addictive ways, although drugs and alcohol had been removed from my life. I went finally to a chiropractor, and I had my MRI in my hand. You know, here's my MRI, and I said to the chiropractor, you know, here, you know, you're going to want to take a look at this. And he was actually a pretty wise guy, and he said, yeah, you know, I'm not really interested in looking at that. And I said, well, this is my MRI. It's going to, show you my spine. It's going to be important for you, right?
Yeah.
he's like,
Yeah.
I'm not really interested in seeing your MRI.
Yeah.
And I pushed a little further, and he said, listen, sit down for a minute. You're holding on to your disease like you're holding on to that MRI.
Mm.
And it was the first time I had learned about the idea, really got this concept of tension pattern.
Yeah.
That there's a tension pattern in the body. And I have a feeling you have a lot of experience with this. And I'm wondering if you can talk about the release of tension patterns that you've seen, because I know even just from the bio I read, you've helped people with chronic pain, fibromyalgia, lower back pain. I mean, we're talking about, it's got to be a third of our country or more dealing with these issues. I
read the other day that 80% of the population at some point experiences back pain in their lives.
Well, and of course, if it's probably even higher within the addicted population of people who use drugs and alcohol. So what is the process of undoing these patterns?
Let me start with this. The results with pain relief and tapping are just, they're unbelievable. I mean, I think part of the challenge is that they are so unbelievable that they're so unbelievable. People go, well, this can't be the case.
Right.
My next book, For Hay House, coming out in 2015, is The Tapping Solution for Pain Relief. Just focusing just on that. On my weekly Hay House radio show, half the callers have back pain, neck pain, things they're dealing with, and literally in 20 minutes, we will either get rid of the pain altogether or decrease it significantly. A guy called yesterday, and he had just been in an accident. We had 10 minutes to work together at the end of the show. He'd never tapped before. He'd somehow turned his phone on, and the Hay House radio was on there. He just didn't even know how he got to it and called in, right? And in 10 minutes, his back pain went from a 10 to a 7, right? Now, that was in 10 minutes. And the experience of a 10 back pain and a 7 back pain is dramatically different.
Big difference.
And if you can go and even, I say to people, if you want to live at a 5 as opposed to a 10, it's a whole different experience. So much more opens up. So, people watching this, if they're experiencing pain, it's like, of course I recommend you tap for everything. But for pain, it's like, you gotta. You have to, because it just works so well. Now, to your question about, well, what's really going on here? With the tapping, sometimes we focus just on the pain itself. So with this guy, I only had 10 minutes, and it was simply, even though I have this back pain, right? And just tapping on that. The deeper work, I'm holding a 3-day event this fall just on pain relief, and we're going to start on the surface, but, what are we going to spend 3 days doing? We're going to spend 3 days doing what you did, what that chiropractor helped you do, letting go of that holding on to that diagnosis. That's one step right there. The diagnosis, the things we believe to be true about ourselves, control our reality. They control how we move. They control how we function. Pain's almost like it's almost like a cancerous tumor that just grows out all over the place, right? Because it starts as one thing. It starts like a little nodule, and next thing you know, it has its hands in all these different things. So now your relationship with your family is affected because you're in pain. What does that mean? I was working with a lady who had migraines for 11 years. When she started getting rid of the migraines with the tapping, she started saying to herself, what am I going to say to my friends who I don't really like and I don't want to spend time with, but I've been using this for the last 10 years as a way to not spend time with them. This is how I get to hide. She had a new challenge from getting rid of this terrible, debilitating pain. We have these secondary gains. Now, I don't think it's fair to say, well, you have these migraines because you don't want to deal with these things in your life. But they all come together, and now the pain is expected. Now you have the fear of the pain. Now you have the addiction to the painkillers. Getting off of painkillers is brutal by itself. So pain has so many aspects to it, and the tapping can come in every single one of them. And again, in the Tapping Solution movie, we show fibromyalgia, gone in 2 days, 30 years of chronic back pain, gone in 2 days. And this is like footage before, footage when they're doing the tapping, footage 6 months later. I filmed it just because it is so crazy that it was like, we got to prove that this is for real. And it is.
Yes. Thank you. I want to shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to try to converse with you about another topic that you've been, particularly recently, I've been watching the stuff that you've been writing about and putting out there, and it has a lot to do with abundance. And I'm talking about abundance in all aspects of life, but specifically with regards to mission, finding purpose, and being abundant in your vocation. Yeah. So financial abundance as well, certainly a piece of that. I want to first just come out and say for anybody out there that struggles with the concept of that having money is in some way unspiritual, I'd like to shelve that idea right away and just say that money's neither good or bad, that it's really about the intention and the motivation behind it, and it certainly makes a lot of things very much easier in life, and we'd like to have as much of it as we can. Think of it from a contributional perspective. But having said all those things, Nick, I could almost split people into two groups in recovery. The people who are doing well in recovery, and I'm talking long-term recovery, so past a year, past maybe 5 years, the people who are doing really well in their lives are on mission. They have a point, they have a purpose, they feel a sense of belonging, a sense of being. The people who are struggling, and it doesn't matter how long they're sober. You could be 25 years sober and absolutely miserable, and it's really important for people to realize that. Yeah. But those people that don't have a sense of purpose, are not sure why they're here, are struggling in their vocation, are having a hard time with their recovery and with their life. I'd love you to talk about some of the great stuff you've been putting out and what you're offering in terms of getting people on point right now.
Yeah. So I mean, it's such a big issue throughout our culture, certainly, especially again, and as a broad term, I'm going to call people listening here today and within the community, whether it be self-help, personal growth. It's a community where we go, look, we're trying to do things to improve our lives, right? And there's a lot of talk about mission and purpose and passion, and then there's almost like another camp within it, which is like make more money, borderline get rich quick, that kind of thing, right? What I'm trying to marry, not the get rich quick, I sure as heck didn't get rich quick, it was a long road, but I'm trying to marry the idea of vision and mission and passion with financial abundance, because the two go hand in hand. Do they have to? No. You can be a poet who is as happy as can be on a daily basis, and you can have a garden outside that feeds you. Like, it doesn't have to be about money. So I'm not saying it lines up this way for everybody. But for myself personally, I've been really broke, and I've been really well off financially. And when I was broke, I wasn't contributing nearly as much as it doesn't even compare to the contribution, right? So I think getting over that, and one of the things that I'm working with the tapping is putting out programs that help people get over these belief systems, that get over the trauma of childhood experiences where people told them it wasn't safe to stand out, it wasn't safe to be big and bold. In our society, when you're big and bold, like, you get pushback. I mean, I go on Facebook, and we've got big fan page, and sometimes we run ads sharing the program. And I mean, some of the things that people write, it's like, I better have some thick skin to deal with it, because it's just, it's brutal. I mean, some things are just, you've seen them. They're out in left field, and always my heart goes out to them so quickly, because I go, my God, someone must be in so much pain and feeling so much anger to take it out on me, who they don't even know, just because they saw an ad, or they don't like my smile. I was looking at a Facebook post where all these people were saying nice things, that I had a nice smile, and then other people were saying mean things about my smile. And I was like, how is this even relevant, right? But those are all people who have sadly not found their mission, who have money traumas, who are scared to be abundant in the world. And I think it's so important, especially as a community. One of the things that I often say is that I'm rooting for somebody in this industry to find a way to make $1 billion, right? And I use the billion example because it's like, whoa, a billionaire. Have someone, Tommy, I want you to make $1 billion. You know why? Because you know what would happen if this Recovery 2.0 conference, it runs free, people can buy it. Let's say it goes crazy viral, you make $1 billion doing it. It goes in your pocket, right? I'm rooting for that. Why? Because I know what you're going to do next. You're going to run ads during the Super Bowl, right? Right next to the beer commercials, right next to the car commercials, right next to the insurance commercials, right next to the food commercials. You're going to run an ad that says Recovery 2.0, a different way, whatever it is you do, right? The opportunities that open up to us when we're willing to be financially abundant are just dramatic. And I think the underlying thing, right, I think what people, unfortunately, a lot of people have this belief that someone with money is going to have negative, they're going to do negative things with it, it's not right. I mean, there's so many things tied into that. But if you believe in yourself and your ability, I know I trust myself with money, right? I mean, you have to trust yourself with money. Like, I trust myself that if I had $1 billion tomorrow, I wouldn't be buying a jet, right? I'd be saying, or I would if I wanted to, right? But I trust that my dominant intention on a daily basis would be, how do I serve people? How do I help them? How do I bring more abundance and joy and happiness and forgiveness and love to the world? That's just how I operate right now. So if we start believing in each other that way too, and rooting for each other, rooting for someone to go, wow, you did really well. Tommy, I can't believe you made $1 billion. That's amazing, man. Not the other thought which goes, well, Tommy made $1 billion helping people with addictions. He should have done it for free. All for free, no business model, right? We have this idea that whenever we help anybody, it should be for free. Well, guess what? You know how these things work. If the Recovery 2.0 conference wasn't able to be bought for the people who wanted to own it, you wouldn't be able to do it because you can't pay for the servers, you can't pay for customer service, you can't pay for the web page and the graphics and the audio and all these things that have to happen.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. So, by the way, that will be incredible when I do get that Super Bowl ad.
Beautiful. Let's put that out there right now. I see it. I see it happening.
Why not? Why not? I'm thinking of Oprah right now. Oprah is someone who's done an incredible amount of good in this world. I believe that, and I think she certainly is a billionaire. Probably several times over, and so she's. Would you consider her in our industry, or?
I especially would consider her in our industry. With the direction that OWN is taking, right? You see, she always did it in her show, her daytime show, the last, say, 10 years, she was moving in this direction.
Yep.
Certainly in the 90s, I wouldn't consider her in our industry. She was always trying to, poke in and put out good work. But if you look at OWN and you look at Super Soul Sunday and the meditation challenge with Deepak, and I know that her commitment, I don't know her personally, I know a few people who know her very well personally, and I've asked them, what is it deep down? Tell me the truth about Oprah, right? We want to know this about these figures. And they all say deep down it's about spreading love and honesty and courage and helping people rise up. I mean, that is what she's all about. So you see that on Super Soul Sunday and the other programming.
Yeah, she's definitely a neat lady, for sure.
I know you had a chance to spend a little time with her recently.
Very brief, but just enough to get a hit off of a person who, quite frankly, how many people does she have to deal with like me every day, who she doesn't know, and we'll get a little off topic, but I was very, very grateful to have met her, and she's.
Well, and that's important to see that because again, we always assign. We project all these things on people with money that they're going to be. The people that I've personally met who are really well off financially, it's probably the same experience as Oprah. Kind and loving and present. They got to where they are for a reason. Are there examples of people who treated people like absolute crap to grow their business? 100%. There are. But the majority of them, I think, got there because they were present and kind and loving.
Yes. It's a dreadful thing to be wealthy and to be mean-spirited. I hope not to experience that in this life. I don't think it's coming for me in that way.
We'll put you back in line if it does.
I trust you to do that. You got to keep me straight. So Nick, you got a whole bunch of offerings coming up, and I want this community to hear a couple minutes of what you have. What are the I know you have some speaking engagements, you have some workshops. Can you speak a little bit more about that so folks know what they can tap into?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. I mentioned the pain relief event October 11th through 13th in Stamford, Connecticut. So that's just outside of New York City. Be 3 days working on nothing but pain relief. So it'll be a really great experience. This fall, I'm also speaking in D.C., New York, and Pasadena for Hay House. And in Pasadena in November, I'll be doing a full-day workshop there. So that's a good opportunity to spend more time together. And, if you go to thetappingsolution.com, you get the first 2 chapters of the book there and a free stress relief meditation with tapping that you can use right away. And from there, we'll let you know about everything that's happening.
Okay. Amazing. Nick, I'm so grateful for your time today. I'm seeing the efficacy of this program in conjunction with 12-step work and recovery work.
Yeah.
I want to push it forward, and I'm going to do what I can to make that happen. Not for you, but because of you.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. And, tapping isn't about me. I'm one of many proponents around the world. I mean, there are literally thousands of practitioners who are amazing, who are working on the ground. There are other incredible experts. We're part of a community people who've just been excited about this, and I'm just one of those voices. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you for lending your voice to Recovery 2.0, Nick, and look forward to seeing you down the road.
Thanks, Tommy. Thanks for having me.
You bet.